What I love so much about cider versus beer brewing is that it really does sort of pull you back into that real sense of place.
Hello, my name is Ria Windcaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world.
Hip, hip, hooray!
Bringing us into episode 452 of Cider Chat was Drew Phillips. He is the brewer and cider maker and founder of Four Phantoms Brewery, which is based in Greenfield, Massachusetts. And in this episode, as we are launching into season 10 of Cider Chat, I wanted to kind of revisit what I did 10 years ago in season 1, which kicked off with a sit-down conversation with Field Maloney of West County Cider. And so that was episode 1 of Cider Chat. And Field and West County is based in my special spot of Ciderville, so I thought, when I was starting the podcast, Cider Chat, I wanted to start where my roots were. And certainly with the Maloneys, not Field himself, but with his father and mother, that'd be Terry and Judith, they really turned me on to cider. It was probably their cider that allowed me to see where it can take you. And that's a little bit about what Drew was talking about in terms of a sense of place. It really hit it on the door knob, if you would, or whatever, the knocker. And so we're kind of, as I'm kind of going into season 10, which just happened because we had episode 450, and that put an end to season 9, and now we're slowly moving into season 10. Last week we had Hello, season 10, with all these introductions we were featuring from the Berkshire Roundtable. That was a ton of fun to listen to. I just love that. Again, I call it Rolodex of information there. If you are in this region of the world, or just to be inspired by all the little nooks and crannies in the orchards all over the map where people are doing outstanding stuff, but you may not know about them. So that's a little bit about what that episode was, and that was last week's episode 451. And now we're in 452, and I'm just hanging around at home. Next week, we'll be having Tom Oliver on. He's going to be, his feature will be his presentation or his keynote at the Herefordshire Apple Banquet that took place last October. So that's a little bit about what you have tuned into, and welcome to the new subscribers, the followers of Cider Chat, and to all the regular listeners out there. I hope you're having a blast wherever you may be. I just dig hearing from you out there, so keep on sending those emails my way, or those little notes that we get on Instagram or all the different social media channels, the Cider Chat YouTube channel. Definitely subscribe to that, please. That would be great. It would kick Cider Chat up, and it certainly helps the industry overall to have cider in the news, cider in the news, cider in the news. You want to keep it there if you believe in it, and you want to keep on seeing this product get better and better and more fun and more fun. All right, so we're going to be speaking with Drew coming up. I'll talk a little bit about his history, because he is not new to cider by any means, and he has already been on Cider Chat too, so I'll do reference to that. But in the meanwhile, I have a wee bit of news from out and about in Ciderville. We have a new cider song. It's being sung by Robert Sherman, who is based out of Esoterra Cider and Winery, and I'm really loving it. It's super fun. You have to go to their Instagram account to listen to the full song. I will put a link in the show notes, but get this little ditty here. It's a good song, and I just love the piece about, he's singing about making your cider dry, and he then says, "You're going to wish you could try." All right, take it away, Robert.
Yo, they call me Bobby Applesteve. Nobody calls me that. I'm a fermentalist dry. Ooh, yeah. You gonna wish you could try. Yeah. I'm a fermentalist dry. Ooh, yeah. You gonna sip on the side. Yeah. I don't add sugar, I don't leave sugar. And I ain't gon' sugarcoat it in the cider game in the USA. Sugar bombs exploded, but people don't realize dry cider's the American way. Hey, Benjamin Franklin on guard. Didn't sweeten this cider, no way. Yo, it's apple to juice, juice in the booze. That's all you need, baby, that's all I do. Throwing them back, finna get loose. We getting smashed like these Virginia hues. Lighting it's crisp with the tan and the chews. Acidity bright with the goldenrod hues. Tropical notes on the finish so smooth. Cider so dry we should be on the news. I'ma ferment it, it's dry. Ooh, yeah.
Apples to juice, juice to booze. That's what you do. Yes, you do, Robert Sherman. Holy smokes, that's a good song. You got to go check it out on their Instagram feed. Look up Esoterra. We'll see what's going to happen. They did mention when I was asking for permission to be able to post that song, saying that might get a professional recording of that. And I think it's totally worth it. One for the ages. Again, it's Robert Sherman. Cider rap song. Loving it. Apples to juice, juice to boost. Yeah. It goes on from there. You don't want to miss it. Definitely check it out. All right, this is a little bit for all the folks who knew about Smokey the Bear, which is associated with when you're a little kid, you used to hear Smokey the Bear tell you don't play with fire or matches, right? Well, in this case, it wasn't fire or matches. It was electrical wires. And I was on a walk, just happened to be on a walk. We had planned with the cousins to do a walk in the woods at night to kind of check out the stars where we were going to. And everything got kind of turned upside down because kind of an unexpected microburst. This is not quite like a tornado or anything, but this immense storm came through that I wasn't noticing because I was checking the weather. I really was. I wasn't going to take people out on a walk when we got caught in this crazy weather. It's like we heard a giant train or a plane that was coming towards us. It made us all stop in the trail and go, what the heck is going on? And the wind kicked up and we started hearing cracking and popping, and we eventually were doing a little loop, making it back towards the house. And as we were getting closer to my home, I saw a light and I thought, geez, I don't remember seeing my house that well enough this deep in the woods. And guess what? It wasn't my house. It was a tree that was on fire about 20 feet up in the air. And this tree was probably about 5 feet away from the lines that went into my neighbor's home. And what happened there is a branch did fall on the lines and must have leaned the lines enough to spark onto that tree. I guess a little arc happens or something, and it caught it on fire. And there was no way that anybody there, unless you could cut it down, which would be a big risk because there's wires and all that. We had to get the fire department out. But a pretty lucky night because had we not been there, I really think that fire could have really made things really bad. So sometimes we're just going with just luck on our side. Yeah. There are some of us out there in Ciderville who are getting ready for the upcoming Totally Cider Tour to the UK this coming summer. And there are some folks out there in Ciderville who reach out to Cider Chat to help them with itineraries for France, which is something that we do. In case you don't know, once again, we're sending a traveler off who will be heading out from Paris for a one-day trip out to Normandy. And we do provide itineraries. So if this is something that you or your family or friends are planning on and you need a little bit of help figuring that out, because I do know it took me probably around, I don't know how many trips out to the Route du Cidre and the Route du Poirier to figure out where to go, how best to navigate that, how to avoid a huge toll fine that you might not be notified for when you're traveling there. There's a lot of little ins and outs when you're traveling to the country, and I kind of enjoy that piece while I'm traveling. That's what I do to set up tours. But if you don't have time for that and you need a little help with some recommendations on tours, we do provide that service here at Cider Chat. You can send an email to info@ciderchat and request a cider itinerary. We ask you some questions and try to set up the best route to make the most out of your travels. And if you want to head out on a Totally Cider tour, do the same thing and just put cider tours in there and let us know how many are in your party and where you'd like to go.
Walking through the orchards,
We first featured Drew Phillips back in Season 8 of Cider Chat in episode 345. I was recording a talk that he was giving on a particular style of co-fermenting cider with beer, and the finished product you would put in the category of a graft. That's like a blending of the wort and sometimes apple juice, and it was delicious. The finished product was called Old Gods. It rang in around 8%, and I loved it. Oh, anytime I hear that he's going to do this again, it'll never be the same again. You know how it is. But, man, it was just so, so good. We fast forward a couple years, and now on tap at the brewery are 5 ciders, all made with local apples. Just a couple miles away, local apples. And he'll be talking about that. What I do want to say about Four Phantoms and Drew himself, he's a fine fermenter. He hails from the Pacific Northwest. He arrived in Massachusetts, and his first job here was as the cider maker for Artifact Cider Project. And he was working there, eventually waiting to build up enough to create Four Phantoms Brewery, which he did. And now he is really cranking out the cider. I mean, we go through the whole bevy of ciders that he's doing, and you're going to be able to hear that, and I hope it really wets your whistle to stop there. And about stopping there, this is an easy off-the-highway stop to Four Phantoms, especially for anyone who is traveling on what is called Interstate 91. This is a major highway that comes down from, Canada and bring you down into Connecticut. So we get a lot of travelers on the highway. And I know when I'm traveling on the highway and I'm needing a good respite, and I'm looking for something, and I don't want to stop at a fast food. I want to go somewhere to kind of chill out and drop into the local scene. Go to their website, and we'll have that in the show notes, or just look up Four Phantoms, Greenfield, Mass, and you can see what events are happening too. Check it out, definitely. And he's showing, that there is a lot of interest in the brewing world when I'm talking about craft beer and cider. We're going to be seeing this more and more. And so I want to give Drew and his whole team there a big tip of the glass for not only having a welcoming scene, but offering what we desire here in Ciderville, which is some good cider. So without further ado, I think this is a really good time for you and I to grab a glass and join this chat with Drew Phillips, the brewer and cider maker at Four Phantoms Brewery, located in Greenfield, Massachusetts. Chapin's Waltz.
Yep. Late harvest.
Late harvest, okay.
Tam Lane.
Okay, Tam Lane.
Redfield.
Redfield, look at that.
And then King of the Wharf.
Hey, cheers, Drew.
Yeah,
Good to
welcome.
see you.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, I always love seeing you. It's always great.
Yes.
You're looking good.
Yeah, ditto.
Back from Vietnam, like earlier.
Yeah, and actually had some really killer ciders in Vietnam.
At breweries or
little coffee shops. Okay. So basically, like every business in Hanoi is 5 other businesses. So the coffee shop where you go and get breakfast and your coffee in the morning is like the bar you go to at night. It's a little bit like how we have been setting up craft breweries, and then you find these industrial spaces that are not used anymore, and then you pack them out and try to make them into everything you possibly can, and so like a lot of coffee shops are just bars, when the nighttime rolls around. And one place we went to just had these like phenomenal, funky, good Vietnamese ciders locally
funky,
produced.
Good, wild ferment.
Wild ferments, and the apples are gigantic. So you would think there would be too much water. They would be too watery with that big fruit and stuff.
Did you find out the varieties they were working with?
Yeah, and I should have done research. Look back at my notes because you were coming. You called me out.
That's okay. Next time.
But it's cool. I had no idea there was such an apple culture
in
there.
Vietnam.
Yeah, if you're in Vietnam, don't skip on the cider. It's really, really good.
Interesting. Very cool.
Yeah, and from what I understand, the trees are sort of conditioned to not necessarily be susceptible to the humidity, and the heavy rains. They're more adapted to that.
The last time I was here, you were doing your ferment for the Old Gods.
Yeah,
right? That was just incredible. I still like think about drinking that. It's like one of the best
It's
graphs or whatever. You just blew my mind.
So basically, where we were at that point was that we didn't have the license. Boring legalese is that in Massachusetts you need to have a separate license for, producing cider, producing beer, and what falls under what category. It's based on the TTB, the federal agency. So we didn't have our winery license when we opened. Now we have an official farmer winery license, so we can be producing our own cider.
Is that why you made a graph then?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't want to give up on the cider making. I really missed it and loved doing it. But now we have the winery license. We're making cider. We got 5 ciders on tap. We're also making mead now. So that's very exciting. All of our ciders are made exclusively with Pine Hill fruit from Coleraine, Mass, run by Matt and David Shearer. Once our labels come through, our ciders will be in their shop. So
in can
yes,
ferments?
Yep,
Okay.
And 16-ounce
16-ounce cans. Okay, wonderful.
So basically what we have are some cool variations on, you mentioned the Old Gods. The Tam Lane cider is essentially what we use to mix with the beer base of the Old Gods. So it's Macintosh apples, is basically treated like a sati, like a Finnish farmhouse brew, in which the mash tun, the pump back flume, everything is a juniper wood. Being in Massachusetts, we use black birch. The cider sits on black birch, is pumped into tank through black birch, and then in tank sits on black birch. You get a big Macintosh profile, nice acidity that we get in Western Mass, while also getting that sort of almost German herbal liqueur note at the back from the black birch. Black birch, of course, being, something that people used to ferment and make all kinds of sodas and beverages out of. So, juniper to someone from Finland is probably a little bit like, we treat birchwood or maplewood.
Right. Tasting really different than the Old Gods to me, as I recall, 100% different.
Yeah, no beer base in that one.
Yeah.
It's 100% Macintosh apples. So that was from the 2023 harvest. Late harvest and Tam Lane are both 2023 apples. And we had a real struggle harvesting the fruit, really wet spring. Some orchards lost their entire crop.
Yeah.
Pine Hill, I think, was a 50% yield.
Bad year.
Real bad year. And you still, and like you say, that's the terroir of Western Mass, is you still get this pronounced acidity. And that one did go through MLF, so it's a nice, smooth, really tasty one.
It's really good. This is like a 6%, nice, steady,
nice and
sessionable.
And credit where credit's due. Artifact Cider Project was where I became the disciple of the Macintosh.
Well, you were the forefront there.
So if it wasn't for ACP, I never would have known how versatile that apple could be, and how really elevated cider makers in this region can take that.
Yeah, I love that you showcase the Mac. Not that it's an American apple, it's a Canadian apple, but the fact that they grow really well around here.
Yes.
And they're so typical in your lunchbox. Yeah. But in the glass, I think they really sing. It's nice what you do.
My first encounter with a pure Macintosh cider was Wild Thing, and I remember again, building your tap room in an industrial space, and that bombed out old magnet factory that we had in Florence, where Artifact opened their tap room and our cidery and stuff, and being there during build out and trying to sort out an entire cellar, and then at the end of the day crushing a warm can of Wild Thing, because we had no walk-in cooler, we had nothing, we just had stacks and stacks and stacks of these pallets, in this empty, sort of bombed out warehouse. And I remember sitting there, we had a little wooden seat cover that I would put on top of an empty keg, and that was what I would sit on to do my paperwork, before the offices were built out and all of that, and having a little Wild Thing can on the floor next to me, and just there's just something tied up in those memories of March 2019, before the Artifact cidery got built out. drinking a wild thing and having that like pure Macintosh taste.
Yeah.
You know,
It really
it's
made
like,
an impression.
It's anytime
Yeah.
I taste anything like even close to that, it just brings me like right back to that. Great
Everybody
memory.
has their own Mac road, you know?
Yeah.
It's so true. I could go off on my own, but we'll just stay here.
Yeah,
I love
yeah.
those stories about Artifact. I mean, that's actually where I first met you.
It was. Yeah.
You
Uh-huh.
were there. You were the head
Yeah.
fermenter.
Yeah,
at
I
Artifact,
remember
doing it all.
Soham introducing us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's when we were wearing masks.
Yep,
and
wearing
the
masks.
crazy days.
Popping little 375s of Baldwin.
Yeah. Feels so long
like
ago.
having
it
to
wasn't.
back away from each other while we,
Jesus.
tasted
And
the
look at it. I mean,
ciders.
the short amount of time, here we are in 2025, but I mean, what you did coming into what was once Lefties and now setting it up, and we have all these beautiful tanks, the barrels over there, and beautiful tasting room, and good people behind the bar. You
Yeah.
just really,
The best team.
I love what you do, and you are a really good fermenter. You're able to hit it.
I appreciate that. That's very kind words coming from you.
Well, yeah, thank you for what I know. But seriously, that old gods blew me out of the water when I saw what you were able to do, and I'm still looking for any other graft out there in the world has not come in comparison, and so that's a challenge out there to all the makers.
I mean, it's like it's sense of place, right? Like you can't make that. Like I couldn't make that again without that black birch from Sam's, yard, essentially.
If you need some black birch, I have some.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and it's like it's
it's that
it's
terroir, that variety.
Yeah, and
I get it.
me and Sam making it together, and we also smoked our own malt. It's all that kind of stuff, and I think that's what I love so much about cider versus beer brewing, is that it really does sort of pull you back into that real sense of place. German brewing, Dutch brewing, Belgian brewing, like that is all rooted in history, but now it's like anybody can buy bags of malt from anywhere and make beer.
Right.
But 15 minutes trucking up the hill, I've got Matt Shearer bringing a poly tote of 250 gallons of Redfield apple juice that's got the cultures embedded in the wood from Scott Farm, from Allison's orchard, from every orchard that's sent their apples to Pine Hill to be pressed. Those wild cultures are dug into that wood. Oh man, it's the best.
Let's keep on talking about some of these ciders.
Yeah, let's
here.
do it. So the Chapin's Waltz and the Late Harvest are basically cousins. And then the Tamlane and the King of the Wharf are also sort of cousins.
Okay, I'm going to go over here. This is the
Chapin's Waltz.
8.5%.
Yep, named after the farmer who supposedly did the first crossbreed for Spy apples, Northern Spy.
Not coming off of that nose.
Yeah, it's a blend of Golden Russet, Baldwin, and Spy. It's co-fermented. We don't sulfate at the beginning of fermentation, so none of those cultures are removed or suppressed or anything like that. I did hit that one with a strain called Alchemy too.
On the write-up it says strong.
Yeah, strong in terms of the relative to our other cider selections. So this is the strongest cider that we've made in-house so far, 8% clocked in. The Golden Russets, so that's a 2024 harvest. The Golden Russets were just like off the charts. Yeah. Everything was just
you get it right on the nose.
Extra this year.
It has a lovely aroma.
Acid was unbelievable.
But I just want to say you're saying like a really big acid, and I'm not really experiencing that as like a bite kind of acid.
Oh
at
no,
all.
yeah. So that one went through MLF as well. Most of our ciders do.
Are you doing that on purpose?
Yes. Soham, one of the owners of Artifact, sort of taught me. One of the best things I learned from him was that sense of like taking your time at things, whereas like coming from beer, I was very anxious to get it in tank, get it fermented, get it brightened, and then get it out of tank, that mentality. Whereas Soham approached like old school cider makers do in Normandy, where it's not ready till it's ready and you taste it. And you just know when it's ready.
You pressed this in 2024.
Yes, that was
I'm drinking this in February.
October, end of February. 2024.
Yeah. And so, well done.
And I would say, it's still young yet.
It's still young, but it's very drinkable.
Yeah, and the sugar yield, so we don't sweeten anything. We don't back sweeten. Like I said, it's low intervention cider making, so we don't use very many sulfites. And we also never back sweeten, and I never add any sugar to any of these ciders either. So the yield for the 2023 harvest was like quite low. Sugar yield, acid yield, just the apples had really struggled that year. Being low intervention, we took the juice as it was. So you can see the difference between the two. It's like almost like a 2% jump in ABV based on.
It's very soft. It's
the,
much softer. It's not as pronounced.
Yeah.
Maybe for somebody who's more in that kind of like wine focus, the Chapin's Waltz is like boom shaka boom, like pops in your mouth, but not over the top. Like the acid I find is really well balanced there.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more softer, it's not mellow. as complex.
Yeah.
But I'm still, it warms up in my mouth.
Yeah, and I think like the two ciders that we got from that harvest, both of them did some extra things to them, just because the apples, you gotta kind of ride or die with the fruit, right?
Yeah.
It's like if you have a bad harvest, that doesn't mean you just shrug and make bad cider. You take the fruit where it's at. What are we going to do? How do we elevate this? How do we still highlight the fruit and make it shine? And here are the positive aspects of this.
Same blend, but from
just
2023 to 2024. It's just what people should expect in the glass, and very nice. So in this glass is a Redfield cider, and Redfield is a red-fleshed apple.
That's correct.
This region's pretty well known for that because the Maloney's, that would be Terry and Judith, were really instrumental for Redfield. And now you see Redfield everywhere. People are doing it, and now people are realizing that there's other red-fleshed apples too besides Redfield. But this is like a really classic and kind of nice local one. And in the glass, you actually get that like rosé. It's really like it's not apricot. It's and I wouldn't even like call it a rosé in a way. It's kind of like orangey.
Orange.
Yeah. Not an orange wine, but nice looking glass there. So let's have a little sniff. I always look for that sensation that just kind of drops me in. Boy, that just dropped me right there.
Yeah.
That was a neat body sense. That's all that really counts. That really dropped me in there. And that was just my first sip.
What I love about cider making is that it's not as regimented necessarily as beer brewing has become, saying like, this is a Pilsner, and unless it ticks these boxes, it's not a Pilsner.
Yeah, you can't do that with apples. You can't do that with grapes.
Right. But with apples and wine, it's so wonderful that we just get to experience it year after year as it is. It's like a snapshot of that.
For folks who haven't had it, you have that nice astringency, a little bit of tannin, a nice structure to the cider. Just brings you right into that apple.
Oh, that's really great hearing that from you.
Yeah. Okay. You give me too much credit
for
what I know. And then now there's a little space in the glass for getting more of the bouquet coming up.
It just has this like spring jamminess. Anytime I have a Redfield, it's like that's what it reminds me of. Is like waking up on a warm spring day and putting
in your
some
step.
Putting some like jam on some good toast.
Totally. This would be good with toast and jam. I tell you, you could have this could be a breakfast cider, no doubt, but also on the finest table. Seriously, I mean that is a very versatile cider in that way. And you're getting ABV of 7.75 for that particular year.
Yep, came in really great yield.
Yeast, what are we doing with the yeast here?
So that one was hit with alchemy as well, but also low intervention. Alchemy is a kill strain, so probably a lot of the wild yeast in those apples didn't make it, but the bacteria did. So we did have enough, probably lacto and pediococcus and, good stuff like that. At Artifact, we did bank the culture from Pine Hill and from Scott Farm. I have the whole scientific analysis of what's in those apples, which was pretty cool. But alchemy is a kill strain, so probably a lot of the Brett or like Brett variations.
So would this have some Redfield from Scott Farm too? Or was this all
No,
primarily?
that was all
this is
Pine Hill.
Pine Hill.
Yeah.
Okay.
100% of what we make is Pine Hill fruit.
Do you find any kind of crossover with your culture here within the brewery? Because you are the trend. This is what we're seeing more and more is breweries with cider.
You can keep it separate. You can have wild fermentation in the same house that you have clean lager beer going in. If you're fermenting in stainless, clean is clean.
Right.
The more porous, mediums that you're using that you have to be worried about. But, in my experience, like, clean is clean.
Yeah. And you're not barrel aging any of these. You're using oak chips, like for this
Correct.
one I'm
Yeah.
trying right now, which is called the
King of the
Wharf. I love the names. You have the best freaking names. I mean, you have one of my most favorite double IPAs around, the Dirtweed.
Oh, Dirtweed.
Oh, God, I love that. That's a good
Bring
one.
that back at some point.
Please.
But
I'm a bit of an IPA snob, but
yeah, me too.
so, there's very few I could drink nowadays, Drew.
Yeah, same.
So I'm trying this King of the Wharf, and I'm immediately tasting that Mac apples.
Yeah.
It's right there again. It has rum-soaked oak chips, very, very subtle.
Yeah.
I love rum. It's
Me
like one
too.
of my favorite spirits.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy that. And I could see this one sitting for a while.
It is young yet.
Yeah.
And the way that I treat my oak chips, I do kind of like an old world style yeast preservation or culture preservation, where like once the birch or the oak or whatever we're using is done fermenting in the tank, I take it out of tank, rinse it out, and then hang it up to dry. Make sure that it's not getting hot pasteurized or anything like that. It's an old technique, right? The Briggy stick, where you make one batch, you throw a piece of juniper in there, you take it out, hang it from a tree, let it dry out. Next batch of beer you make, you throw it back in there, because all of those cultures have dug into that wood.
Absolutely,
and
yeah.
then once you put them back in solution,
Go wild. Yeah.
So the black birch is on its like third go round. Started out in a batch of Old Gods, and I've been using it in every batch that we've birch aged since. And then the same thing for the oak cubes up there. So anytime we repeat that process, I'm going to oak age something where I want like a sort of a subtler oak flavor out of that. That is going to go right back in the tank, and it's
Nice.
going to have that memory, from
Yeah.
every time it's been put in tank before.
Yeah. This one is your Chapin's Waltz, right?
Yes. Yeah.
This is becoming more complex.
Funny thing, those two fermented in poly. I didn't have stainless to put them in. Just like wood,
Yeah.
little cultures are going to bury into that poly, and they're always going to be there.
But
And so,
you get a
it's
lot
like,
of complexity out of here now.
that
It's like
is
raspberry.
the Chapin's Waltz tote is right over
See
boiled
that
over.
complexity.
Yeah, poly tanks in the cidery. And I think there's something to that, fermenting in cement, fermenting in poly,
Yeah.
like
You
fermenting
have.
in oak, where these fermented completely in poly and then basically brightened in stainless.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas King of the Wharf went straight into stainless, primary fermented in stainless.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can kind of feel it's protected. Because
Yeah.
when you have like that rum soaked kind of chips, you
Yeah.
really know that's like a baby
Yeah.
whatever. It's even a beer's like that. You can tell
Yeah.
it's baby. It's not clinical, but it's like
Stainless
really
is for
kind of
babying.
held in there.
It is a little clinical.
And you could kind of taste it. This, just on the time I've been sitting here, it's like I'm getting a lot more complexity now.
Chapin's
Don't worry
Waltz
about it.
was definitely one of those. You learn these little techniques and like getting
That-
the like
that's
shop
that's
vac
crazy
out,
good.
and like by the time it got down here, I was like definitely shop vacuuming, like little pockets of like the bad
I
shit,
love it.
off the top, because like
Yeah.
for some reason the culture has just like stopped taking off. Like I said, at Artifact, that shit would be fermenting by the time it got to the cidery.
Yeah.
And now it's like, like a couple days, like it starts to make your neck itch. Like there's no
Yeah.
krausen, there's
Yeah.
no activity. And it's like, well, fuck, I gotta hit it with yeast or the shit's gonna mold.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
it's like, there is that sort of like romantic farmhouse
Yeah.
thing that happens where you're like, oh yeah, Dick Wilkins just, throws his apple juice in like dirty black tanks and like never cleans anything and stuff like that. It's like, the flip side of that is like,
Are you talking about Roger Wilkins?
Roger Wilkins, Land's End Farm, right?
Yeah. The king is the cider king. Yeah, I'll still cider. Well, what's interesting about this is, and just in general, and I really want to encourage you, like, you are a freaking skilled fermenter. So it's almost like, Artifact. I liked Artifact's one-offs.
Yes.
I wasn't
From
really.
Lastiano,
I wasn't
like,
really a fan
still-
of anything in the cans. I found it kind of one-dimensional.
That's fair.
Just because it was like high production, as
Yeah.
Roger Wilkins say, that's industrial cider.
It is.
And
Yeah.
your Redfield, you have the fruit. The fruit is the thing. It's the fruit. Is the fruit. Is the fruit. You are making your own mark, and the fact that it went a little wiggy, now you have something that's actually complex and stands out in the glass.
Yeah.
And it's something to write home about.
And it's the idea behind, hanging up the wood too.
Exactly.
Is like, if it's good enough, it's like,
You blow me out of the water with that kind of stuff.
I love reading accounts of old home brewers who are like, yeah, I hung it up in the barn, bird shit all over it. Just put it on the floor, rinsed it out, threw it right
That's
back
right
in there.
up your alley. That's up your alley.
Like you're saying, the two that primarily fermented in poly are the ones that you have like marked out as like,
Yeah,
ones.
but
And so,
we keep on referring to the UK. What are they all fermenting? And they're all doing poly.
all poly.
They're not necessarily.
Solid
You don't
black in the middle of a sheep farm.
see the more mold, the better, baby. Bring on the black mold.
I know, yeah.
It's kind of creepy, but
Yeah.
it works, and it gives. What do we want in the glass? We want something that's going to be unique, memorable. It's
Yeah.
going to be an experience. It's going to bring us on some kind of trail down the path. I'm like, God, that was a good journey.
Yeah.
That's what you
Yeah.
want. All these ciders are very, very drinkable, super quaffable, and I'm always looking for the ones that are like stand out, like boom. As soon as I had that Redfield, it's like reset. Man, that was like that was a body feel.
Yeah.
That was a body feel. And this one, coming back to it, the Chapin's a little bit more warmer.
Yeah.
So that's kind of changing it too.
That is the one that Jason, the owner of the Moan Dove, he targeted that one
He
too.
liked that too.
We're on second
Yeah.
keg in less than a
Then
month.
he knows something.
And they're flying through it. So,
You're getting like
you
berry
called
out
it.
now.
There's something in that cider that speaks to folks. It's got its own little unique voice,
Yeah.
as opposed to, it's like, I think there is a place for everything, right? There is a place for industrial cider. And
Yeah.
that like if I'm floating down the river in a little inner tube, I want to crush a can of Wild Thing. I want to crush a can of Feels Like Home. Like I don't necessarily want a 750 milliliter bottle of Posh Scrumpy.
No, but there's another way to look at it. You only have one liver, so
That's
to be
true.
judicious,
That's a
you
good
want to be able to
point.
drink for
Yep,
the rest of your
yep,
life.
yep.
So
You're
might as well
using-
drink,
yep,
high end and
Well
support
played.
support
Well played.
the.
Yeah, using the
no, I
concept,
bring
yeah.
up PBRs. It's okay.
That's good riposte. Good riposte. Yeah.
But I mean, seriously, when somebody brings out like a batch of cider, the difficulty, it's like going to a brewery right now, finding that uniqueness between the ESB, the stout, the Pilsner,
Yeah.
the,
When it's like
pale ale
they're
is
only
different.
using one house strain of malt,
And we used to
they're
see
all
that, yeah.
using raw,
Yeah.
Pilsen
Yeah,
malt, and it's
yeah.
like I find that a lot, and I've gotten in pretty heated arguments with brewers about. I don't use the same malt for
Yeah.
every single beer I brew. That's ridiculous. Everything has its place and everything has its
Yeah.
purpose. King of the Wharf, like you even get a little
Yeah.
bit of that like
Yeah.
kombucha, like it almost thought about going to vinegar, and then
But you turned it.
but like,
You're on it.
But
Good for
alchemy
you.
saved my ass.
Good alchemy. Well, so poetically named
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, like that, there's that tension between capitalism versus craft. I wouldn't even have an IPA on tap, but like, we'd all be out of a job.
Yeah, know what
yeah.
your lane is and go for it. And don't be swayed by anything else. At least that's what I see wherever in the world.
Yeah,
And those who pick a lane and strongly go into it succeed. Here you're making something that is really pleasing.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, what you're saying, and then
Yeah.
like lean more into the wild fermentation.
Yeah, no, it's exciting.
Let it rip in the poly,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, normally
I'll get some concrete eggs in here.
do it. Yeah, why not?
That'd be dope.
Yeah.
We talked about doing that at Artifact and putting them underground, like Georgian winemaking.
Kivri, a little kivri, like a big clay pot.
I ferment in chimenea,
Oh. I see them on Marketplace.
Yeah, all the time. But no, that's great advice, and I think you're right in that, like, it is where I wish like every shop would go.
It's going to be really fun to watch you moving forward and to get it in that packaging so people could bring it or it could be shipped or something like that. You're going to be blowing people's minds. I have no doubt about that. Do you find many cider drinkers coming in here, or are you mainly pulling in beer drinkers?
Yeah, we had pub sing. Really, really cool. Had people in here all singing winter folk songs, wassailing songs, carols, all that kind of stuff. And since things have shifted a little bit, we had probably 50 people in here on Sunday singing anti-fascist songs all together, which was wonderful. And overwhelmingly, most of them ordered cider or mead. So I think there is something
a little shift there.
I think there is something really comforting about knowing that your neighbor grew this fruit. Your neighbor turned it into cider, right? The same place where you go buy your apples is the same place that gave those apples to your local pub that turned it into cider. There is something so ancient and cool about cider and mead. That beer is obviously like old, but it is like,
and it settles different in your body
pure
too.
Yeast ferment. It is a little bit of like you're getting anonymous grain. There is a little bit of like a removal of place with beer versus unless you're fucking British or German or Belgian, right? Like, or Canadian. Like you are growing every single ingredient. In that beer, you have this old tradition, in your culture, whereas America, our history is sort of like, fuck that, I want to make money. It wasn't at all about the craft of brewing. It wasn't at all about heritage. It wasn't at all about, this inherited knowledge.
I think it was initially.
It was initially,
brewers,
but then it became like everything else about money,
Well,
with the exception of some shops that we all know about. 50% of cideries in the United States live or die by their tap rooms. They produce less than 7,000 gallons. Over 50% of cideries produce less than 7,000 gallons of cider per year, which is 6,000 more gallons than I probably produce out of this place, beer, cider, and mead combined.
Isn't that something?
In the cider world, we are all still very much small, locally rooted. We are all still very much like, this is me and my wife, or like, this is me and my husband. This is like, this is me and my brother, me and my sister. This was our family orchard. We decided to make cider on it. Because Grandpa used to, and then, Dad became an engineer and let the orchard go feral. All of these stories are still what drives cider, whereas beer has lost its way. I still love making beer. I still love beer, but in terms of craft brewing, it's unrecognizable from when I started in the industry.
Interesting.
Which was like, it felt more punk to me, back in the day. Like, obviously there was still the capitalist.
It was a great glory time, baby.
It was fucking great, man.
I can tell
I mean,
you
it's
that
like, every week we'd have, when we were like the ugly, kid on the block in McMinimans out in Portland, but we'd still have these guys who were like, celebrity chefs now. They would just come by the shop and like have a pint, so they're like, out to the property to, play around to like, par 3 golf or whatever the fuck you do, at Edgefield. And we'd have, Ben Adams, all of these guys, Tanya from Tin Barrel, big names in craft beer. Like, we were all just homies. It was like going to a punk show. You see. I
remember those days.
Yeah.
Very, very well.
Yeah. Peter Allen,
everywhere.
all of those
accessible.
Folks.
Well, I hope we don't lose that in the cider world. I think that.
I think it would be a shame.
Yeah.
Legions of bullshit craft cideries that put artificial flavoring in their ciders. It's not like people haven't tried to wreck a good thing already. I think there's just something about cider that resists that.
I think you're right. I think you're right. I think we have many, many good years ahead of us.
Yeah, I agree.
And we're really at the infant stage of understanding the potential of cider. The cider makers get that. The audience to cider, it's just really at that beginning stage that we saw where craft was, and that is exciting. It's really exciting to see it, and it takes a while to get there, And so let's enjoy the ride,
And I know that I agree completely, and it is one of those things. When I started as a cider maker in 2019, it was like, okay, well, now is going to be cider's moment. And I hope that never happens because I
think every year's a moment.
We preserve these individual voices that are so unique and important. And I think about a place like the Commons Brewery in Portland when they closed. Literally, those guys were coming to our shop to give us advice on how to make a good wild fermented saison. And they're like, look, it's going to smell like dirty diapers and taste like Band-Aids for a period of time. Ride it out. Live with that. And then it's going to come out good on the end. That was like doing wild fermentation. I've never gotten better advice than that of trust
the process.
Know your culture and trust the process.
Absolutely.
And having that sort of ride or die mentality with product that I don't think a lot of people have the stomach for anymore. And they went under some of the best beer, the finest made beer I've ever had, and they went under in 2016 before this huge crush happened. But
really,
if the deal is everybody makes a ton of money and this becomes super popular, or all of these really unique, incredible voices get preserved and get to maybe not get rich off their businesses,
well,
but
I don't think it's bad to make money off of a good product.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. I
don't
mean that at all.
Yeah.
I just mean when craft beer got hit with the celebrity chefification of the industry, I think that's when things turned a corner. When the Brewdog guys got a TV show, and when the Dogfish Head guy got a TV show, and all that stuff, I think is when things kind of turned a corner. We still believe in the craft of this, but at the same time, I have all of these shareholders I need to convince.
Yeah. Time's going to tell.
When
nobody has that crystal ball. I mean,
100%.
Totally learn from the wine world, totally learn from the craft beer world, but cider's its own beast.
Hoping that the wine world is a better sort of
but the only
parallel.
Difference is right. I mean that it's
where you can still have all of these weirdos.
But it keeps you separate. The wine world kind of shot themselves in the foot because they made it so inaccessible to people.
Yeah.
And in cider, nobody's an expert.
Yeah, I mean, if cider is having its moment, I want people, the industry, quote unquote, leaders, have that punk mentality of no, fuck that. This is the way I do it. At least I went out swinging.
Yeah, get irritable, get righteous, and own it.
Thank you for taking the time to swing by. I know how busy you are.
Oh, my pleasure.
You can find all the mentions that were made in this here episode with Drew Phillips, such as how to find Four Phantoms or the cider song that we heard from Robert Sherman of Esoterra Cider Works, by going to ciderchat.com. You'll find a little search bar up there. Put in your keyword and voila, there you go. As always, I want to thank all the folks who are patrons of this here podcast or hit the donate button at ciderchat.com. Esoterra Cider Works is actually one of the members of the Cider Going Up page. You could check out the full list at ciderchat.com. Just look under support. And I hope this encourages you too to become a patron today. Just search for Cider Chat and Patreon. That's spelled Patreon. And with that, I leave you here. This is Real Wind Caller signing off for now. Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
Strange apples, bitter sharp. Strange apples, juicy ripe. bop, ba-dum-doo-doo-dop. Who wants a tannenbaum?
I want a tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples, bittersweet,
strange apples, hanging high. Got them strange apples. Forget the pie. Strange apples. Squeeze them tight. Got them strange apples. Strange apples. Strange apples. Make them pop. Pop, 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 ba-dum-doo-doo-dop. Pop, 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 ba-dum-doo-doo-dop.
Who wants a tannenbaum?
I want a tannenbaum.
Who wants to pull them down?
I'm gonna pull them down. Hey, 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 apples. Come and see. Plenty strange apples for you and me.